Hello, so track building is something I think is probably a bit too long-winded to have a time lapse for, but here's a video of me building some track. So the first thing I've got, as you can see, is a template. This is printed on my home printer from a program called Templot, which is, if you just Google Templot, you can do it, and this is entirely custom to my requirements. So it's the divergence is a 1 in 8 across here. It's a single slip with a B length of the switch blades here, and you can see over here I've got a turnout that's partially complete. This was an experiment to use chair plates that I think I'm not going to pursue, but I'll leave this here because this is just a standard straight right hand point, so it can go anywhere almost. But yeah, what you can see here, I've got two templates, and the reason I've got two is I'm only building from this one, but when you've got the rails and soldering and gauges, sometimes it's hard to see exactly what is where. I mean, there are these red indicator marks, which are quite helpful for different things, but it's nice to get an overview on here, so that's why I've got two side by side. And this is printed on fairly thick card. I got a pack of 50 from Amazon for a few pounds, and I've used Pritt stick, this Yoo-hoo stick, to stick it to this piece of plywood, this thick piece of plywood. Two reasons for that. One, you need something flat to work from, and it's always convenient to be able to remove it. So in this case, I can just soak this whole thing with water, the paper will disintegrate, and the piece of track will lift off very easily. The reason I'm not using double-sided tape, which is something you often see in the larger scales, is that this stuff is just so flimsy. If it was stuck with double-sided tape here and I tried to lift it, I would just bend the whole thing, which would be a bit of a nightmare. So by using this kind of inexpensive Yoo-hoo glue, I know that it will just dissolve, and there's no risk to any of the parts here. I'm actually also using this Yoo-hoo glue, as you might be able to see from the somewhat disturbed top, to glue. So I'll measure these. I'll use this pair of clippers to cut them to the right length, and then essentially just wipe the sleeper on top of the glue and then place it in place. And occasionally I'm using a pair of tweezers just to make sure it's aligned properly and pushing it around. You can see I've cut two holes here and over here, and that's because that's where the tie bar is going to go, which will move the switch blades. And I'm going to be using the Easy Tracks tie bar, which just requires a bit of clearance, and it's just a lot easier to just cut this out now and have that extra ½ mil of clearance than it is to try and dig around afterwards when everything's in place. So next video will show, or next section of this video rather, will show all of these in place and the next steps.